After I finished my Zorn research, I swapped my focus to another trait that has been on my mind for a while now, Deadeye. Ever since Aphelios got nerfed, I was looking for a different carry for this trait. I tried around with the Deadeye emblem, and while some units like Belveth showed some promise, I didn't really find anything that I wanted to keep playing. I went back to the original units and tried some reroll comps. While Ashe feels borderline playable, at least in a high roll setup, Akshan currently seems to be the best option. Now when you play Akshan yourself, you will probably encounter the same problem as me. How do you position this guy to snipe the enemy carry? Akshan can be strong enough to rip through the enemy front line, especially when you 3-star him, but before you get to that point, it can be frustrating when he wastes his entire ability into the enemy front line. When I was confronted with this problem, I was reminded of a trick I discovered in set 8 with Yuumi. Yuumi's ability could curve to the left or to the right. This would cause one of her abilities to hit the enemy backline and the other direction hit the front line. I noticed that if I Zephyr the frontline hex that would block the Yuumi ult, then she would ult right through that unit into the enemy backline. I never managed to get great use out of the strategy, but I figured this might be interesting for Akshan as well. Obviously, the easy solution is just to spam Zephyr and create a large hole for him to shoot through, but this is not what I was after. I wanted Akshan to snipe the enemy corner by only using a single Zephyr. It took a bit of trial and error because his angle can completely mess up this whole strategy, but I found a reliable setup for each corner. If you want to snipe the top left corner, then Akshan needs to be placed in the third row on the second hex to the right. Your Zephyr has to be placed in the first row, one hex to the right of the middle. This way his ability will fly in an angle that goes past the entire enemy front line right into the corner. With enough damage items, you can kill the enemy carry at the start of the fight.
Dude, that is fucking disgusting. That is absolutely disgusting.
For the top right corner, Akshan wants to be in the third row on the second hex to the left. This time, the Zephyr needs to be placed in the middle of the first row. Again, this will create an angle, bypassing the entire enemy front line, and all shots will land in the corner. This is quite a powerful setup against players who are lazy with scouting or simply aren't aware of the strategy. Next up, let's talk about items. So Zephyr has a duration of 5 seconds. Akshan starts with 30 mana and has a maximum of 90. For this strategy to work, Akshan needs to start with enough mana that his entire ult duration is over before the frontline unit that was hit by Zephyr is back on the ground. Initially, I tested the setup with Shojin and Hand of Justice, which was fast enough, but I felt like I wasn't dealing enough damage. Once I tried the setup with Blue Buff, it became quite clear that this is a required item if you're going for the strategy. He will ult after one auto attack, and it allows you to add 2 AD items like Deathblade and Infinity Edge to ensure that he has enough damage to kill the unit in the corner. So what does the rest of the setup look like? Well, Deadeye is currently being played with either a Bastion frontline or the usual Freyord setup that Aphelios used to run. You can play 4 Bastion with 2 Deadeye with level 6 and add a Lissandra with level 7 for Freyord. Now you could stay at level 7 and roll for Akshan 3, but I don't really like the strategy. Instead, I want to use the power spike of Akshan 2-star to rush for level 8 and cap out my board with strong tier 4 and tier 5 units. It's still possible to roll for Akshan 3-star with level 8, and this allows you to play strong units like Urgot that help you finish off the enemy backline. It's also not that bad to have some other damage dealers if Akshan ends up getting caught. As for legends, if you want the easy route, then go for Twisted Fate to ensure your best in slot items. Arguably, the more powerful approach is to take Ezreal and only commit to the setup if your initial components allow you to build the core items for this comp. While you will auto-win some matchups, not everything is quite that easy. It did feel like that the Yasuo-Kai'Sa matchup is quite rough, as Yasuo has an easy time catching Akshan in the third row, and Kai'Sa likes to dash to safety when she gets hit by his ability. Still, with enough damage and a little bit of luck, you can still find success even against the more difficult matchups. Just make sure that you adjust your positioning and Zephyr accordingly. Let me know in the comments how it worked out for you. I hope you learned something, and see you next time. Okay, that should be a dead Teemo. 4 frontline, wait, and Zephyr on the Taric, auto attack, and... This is so disgusting. This is so fucking disgusting.